Well, in the morning we heard both Dr. Vivek Joshi and Mr. Devashish Panda talk about the opportunities that present in the insurance sector and what the industry as a whole needs to do. Our second session is going to deliberate more on it. For the same, so the session is on accelerating insurance penetration and coverage, combining industry, regulatory, and legislative effort. And for the same, can I please request Mr. Saurabh Mishra, Joint Secretary, Department of Financial Services, Insurance, FinTech, Ministry of Finance, to please come on stage. Can I also have our speakers, Mr. Abhay Tewari, Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer, Star Union Dai-ichi Life Insurance. Abhay. Can I then request Mr. Krishnan Ramachandran, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Niva Bupa Health Insurance Company, to please come on stage? Can I now have Ms. Girija Subramanian, Chairman-cum-Managing Director, Agriculture Insurance Company of India Limited, to please come on stage? Can I have Mr. Tapan Singhel, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Bajaj Allianz General Insurance Company, to please come on stage? And can I also request Mr. G. Srinivasan, Director NIA, to please join us on stage? I'll request Mr. Saurabh to please chair the event.
Do we have Abhay joining us?
We'll check with Abhay if you can. He's here.
Thanks. So good morning all and good morning panelists, Mr. Singhel, Madam Girija, Krishnan, Abhay, and Mr. G. Srinivasan. Morning, friends. And good morning, actuaries, Mr. Arora, and the fellow actuarial colleagues and friends and communities. A wonderful session in terms of where and how we take forward in accelerating the penetration and coverage of India in regards to the insurance, as we connect the economy and the insurance together. Let me start with what Honorable Prime Minister said in the last 15th August speech of his about the 5 pranas, or the 5 sankalps for the Amrit Kal. And the first one amongst them was the commitment that he spoke for each of us as the citizens for the country. The first one was that can we be a developed nation or the developed country. And the one most important part for us to be a developed nation in 2047 and when we complete 100 years is that can we be an insured nation. One of the most important tick in order to be a developed nation is an insured nation. And that to me is a starting point. If we have to be a developed country, we have to be an insured country. Insurance of assets, of lives, and of health. And that is to be one of the most important points with which we can go ahead. We all know, ladies and gentlemen, that COVID has played havoc in our lives, in our assets, as country, as our psyche. It is also a fact that possibly as a country, we have dealt with COVID better than many, and if I can dare say, better than any as a nation. And therefore, we should take pride, we should take satisfaction in terms of the way we have really held our nerves, our characters, our assets, and our economy together in terms of dealing with the pandemic, in terms of dealing with the issue at large. One of the proof in the pudding is we are sitting together here with our smile and with our economy held together. And as we move forward, with insurance being in the center of it, this is where is the way we are opening up our session of how do we take the insurance as the underpinning or as the pivot in terms of the way we start discussing that how can insurance be the pivot with which we start the nation. So let me start our discussion of today together in terms of taking the entire thing forward. Mr. Srinivasan, you have been associated to this entire building up the nation through the underlying concept of the insurance. As we go forward, sir, do we see that the underpinning of insurance being available for India in the coming years, is there a possibility of the way the legislative, the regulatory and the industry coming together? We've been seeing certain changes around in the coming, in the last few months, in the last few quarters. Do we see that, is it an enough amount of traction that we are able to generate? Or is there a way forward that we can really see some more things coming up that can really take things forward from here onwards?
Thank you, sir. And I once again thank the Institute of Actuaries for giving me this opportunity. Clearly, the vision of the government to make India fully insured by 2047 is something all of us will have to make it happen. And both the government as well as the regulator have been working very hard in the last few months to make this possible, to create an environment where this can really become a reality by as early as possible. First thing is talking about the legal reforms which the government is planning to do. I think quite a few things are being planned and clearly it will create a very facilitating environment for the industry to really take insurance to the people. Now, talking about the regulatory reforms, we heard the regulator just now, and he is very passionate about really, making things easier for the insurance industry to take insurance to the people. So I clearly see the reforms both by the government as well as the regulators very, very positive, and clearly, we are on the right path to take insurance to the people as early as possible. But I also feel that probably we need reforms plus something. Because I think reforms are largely focused on the supply side of insurance. We really have to do something on the demand side of insurance as well. So why do people not take insurance in India today? One is they may not be aware of insurance, but even those who are aware of insurance don't take insurance. I think it is here, the industry has to really create a confidence in the minds of the people that insurance is really a mechanism which can help them in times of need. I think simplification of policies, settling claims faster, cashless in every line of business. So creating that confidence is probably will make people take insurance, look at insurance as a very important part of their life. I'm sure that this will happen with a lot of things happening around.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan. Mr. Singhel, you have been a doyen of the industry for last so many years and have worn the various hats from public sector to the private sector, have been associated with various forums and the councils and the associations, and have been leading the industry from the front. You've been also associated to seeing some of the reforms that have taken place under your leadership and captaincy. You've also seen some of the minuses that industry has gone through and has still been in the realm of when you see the outside in view of the perception that the industry carries till date. So these forums, including the Forum of Actuaries, we've been kind of taking pride in the inside rooms. While the outside in view for insurance sector per se might not be the same as we speak till date. What are those perception battles, Mr. Singhel, that insurance sector till date fights? Not just the battles which are known as the top 3 battles of the penetration, then densities and coverages, but what are the real headline perception battles that we fight till date? And do you think to connect the insurance from those perception battles, we still have got a long journey? And if yes, what are the two, 3 headline things that we need to think, Mr. Singhel, to connect the insurance with an ordinary average Indian in order to really connect it well and connect it deeper, longer, wider, broader and higher? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. It's a very interesting question and thank you for this opportunity. First and foremost, I think we unnecessarily take a lot of pride in what we have achieved or what we contribute. Because ask any person on the common man on the street and do that anywhere in the world and they will tell you that insurance companies don't deliver in terms of need. We look at the data points in terms of combined ratios or the way the industry is suffering in terms of profitability. In the industry, you'd feel they're bleeding to death paying claims. But any common person, ask this question, let one person come and tell me that they feel that the insurance companies are paying claims, which is such an ironical thought. So your question truly reflects that. Now let's look at actuaries, let's look at us as companies, us as professionals. No? In terms of payment of claims, it's such a friction environment. We try to figure out that there's no fraud, rightfully so from the industry perspective, before we pay the claims. It's hugely filled with friction. In today's time of data, in today's time of such a plethora of information, why can't we pay claims immediately, come what may, on the go? Do a research on the claims post data, and whoever's committed fraud, take very strong actions against that person. Can we turn the whole concept on the head first and foremost? I think let's start thinking from that perspective. Can we change the perception that insurance companies are there in times of need to take care and come what may? I feel it can be done. The second point is, let's look at, you talked of COVID, you talked of the entire ecosystem. Rightfully said, the insurance industry paid a lot of claims, 35,000 crores, very well done. But with the data coming into the insurance industry, did the insurance industry at the right time tell protocols which were helping patients in different hospitals, giving better results for a faster turnaround in doctors all across the world, all across the country? No. They sit on such a huge amount of data. Claims are coming, patients are recovering, no? And that's fine, they're just paying claims. But does the onus lie in the industry also, along with all the actuarial sciences and the data that they have, to throw out and churn out to the government, to the industry body, to the doctors, that this protocol in this place has worked much better, and we see much better results. So can this be replicated at a much faster pace? The industry can play such a huge role in society, in the current status which is there. So less resting on the laurels of the past with just 5-6 products, talking of the role that they're playing and being happy about it, I think that era is over. It requires a complete turning on the head, and I'm very happy the regulator and the ministry is making a lot of progress in the direction. At the same time, worried, is the industry ready to cope with the pace? It's like the fish ball becoming an ocean. Can the fish be ready to take on the ocean? No? And is the fish thinking about that? Are they ready to plan in terms of changes happening and the speed at which it's happening? Can they take it on? Those are three things in my mind, if you ask Mr. Mishra, top of the mind to look at it in the current scenario.
Thank you, Mr. Singhel. I think this is a very, very interesting perspective. And some of it appears to be slightly disruptive for some of the CEOs who are sitting on the dais and a few of the actuaries who possibly connect with those CEOs to take home some important takeaways for them to start reimagining the way they think about insurance and the claim processes. So Abhay, you have been an actuary for a long time and then turned as a CEO of a life insurance company. Your journey, when you saw the insurances, if you recollect, 2000 insurance was penetrated at around 2.7 in India, and now it is around 4.2, as Chairman reminded us, as per the Swiss Re Sigma data, the last published data. So this is a bit of a journey, as we see, because as we all know that this number is over and above the GDP increment that the country talks about. PMJJBY and SPY has done some kind of a heavy lifting in these numbers, while the rest of the industry is also doing its own bit in terms of taking it forward. Rural and social obligation that IID has been mandating is also contributing. Where do you think all of it is kind of leading in terms of really taking into the vision that IIDA chairman spoke about, or I spelled out from the way the Honorable PM is speaking about? Is it adding up to all that? Is there really a help that is taking place? The way we spoke about that changing of the rates, which took place last year in terms of slightly increased numbers on the premium correction side or the capital release side. Is all of those measures that is being attempted from the ministry side or regulator side an actual help which is causing some serious attempts that can unleash the power of spreading the insurance? Do you really feel these are the help, or something else can be done in this direction?
Thank you, Saurabh. I think, as you mentioned in the beginning, that India wants to be, a developed country, and we feel that in developed country the average penetration is about 7 to 8% of the GDP, unlike say 3.5 to 4% which we currently have, and that if I consider only the protection element, we are far actually smaller, because in terms of numbers, if I have to say, maybe developed world will have 250% of GDP as the sum assured, whereas in India it will be about 25% of the GDP as the sum assured. So it will be like 10% rather than just 50%. Now it may appear that we are at 3.5%, 4%, which is half of the developed nations average, but on the protection side it is really very small. So penetration wise, we have reached out to many people in India now, thanks to the Prime Minister's scheme and regulator helping in pushing the penetration, trying to make it easier for us on many fronts. I mean, I would just give an example that this Prime Minister's scheme, it's reached out to 100 million people in a very short time, like say 7 years. But in the last 2 or 3 years, it has really doubled actually. So now we were losing money, and there was a requirement that the claims were higher than the pricing of the product. Immediately there was some action done, and the pricing was revised. The standard deviation was low actually, because the claims were higher, expected claims were higher, but the deviations from that claim level was fairly small. So that also helped us in requesting the regulator to reduce the capital requirement for the scheme, because we said that the deviations are not so much, and now that the pricing has been revised, then the capital requirement should be brought down, and that also was reduced to half. And I think, because we showed to the regulator that even in the worst time in the COVID claims, we have not exceeded that 50% mark. So if the capital was at 50% level, it would have still met the requirements at that time in the COVID period. So, if regulator has been listening, it has been, they have been helping us, they have been asking us as to what are the areas you require that support. If you see, just immediately after COVID, the subordinated debt requirement, I mean, we can raise only 25% subordinated debt as capital, or preference share as capital, but that was increased to 50%. So just to see that the companies are not in trouble, because there were a lot of claim payouts. It was 2.5 times, 3 times. The claim which we paid in that year was like 2.5 to 3 times of what we usually pay in any year. So suddenly, if you have that kind of an outflow, and capital requirements were eased. On the product side, we have been allowed to do a lot of products on our own without, immediately approval was initially required from the regulator, but now we can file it, start selling it, and just inform the regulator. And I think with the appointed actuary becoming more, central in the whole thing, the innovation and everything is being encouraged by the regulator by saying that, now the ball is in our court as to how fast and how far we can take it. So if you see, regulator also allowing companies to create subsidiaries, maybe perhaps in the insurtech areas, health tech areas, so that, if you set up an innovation center within the organization, sometimes it works, sometimes it's not, but if it's a purely dedicated, we need a lot of fundamental 0 to 1 kind of thinking here. I mean, basically we have been replicating what has been done worldwide, but I think India needs its own way of growing things. And I think that is where the regulatory ease and the regulator interacting with us and trying to find out that, is becoming very important. We are discussing a lot of composite licenses. We are discussing, making the commission process very easy and more flexibility in giving back the commissions. We are expecting that, maybe the insurance agents will be allowed to sell for multiple companies, multiple products. So these kind of things, will definitely increase the penetration in the coming years.
Sure. I think you're absolutely right, and this is the way, I think, when we talk about walking the talk, is where the regulator, the legislator, and possibly the councils, which is where I was talking to Mr. Singhel a few days back, when all these ecosystems begin to not just become enabling, but also empowering, where the entire industry and then the stakeholders start to feel the connect with each other. So Krishnan, you have been playing an important role of being an important constituent of something called the health ecosystem through a concept called SAHI, standalone health insurance company, and Niva Bupa being one of the important constituents. As we all know that it is likely to be that half of the insurances will begin to be sold through the concept of health and health insurance related areas. COVID has thrown open the challenges and the awareness both. And as we know that insurance penetration in health is still paltry of what the hospitalization insurance is available to be, and hardly any in terms of the non-hospitalization part of it. Where do you see the whole ecosystem is moving towards for an average Indian? And where do you see it is moving towards for a Indian which is possibly not even health aware about in the next 3 to 5 years? And what is the plan which you feel that we can take together as a community, which is the provider community for the health insurance segment?
Sure, Saurabh. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity. I want to offer a slightly contrarian perspective, Saurabh, which is, India is a God-fearing country. India is not a natural protection country, to the point which Abhay made. And unfortunately, God is not an actuary where something like protection, which is essentially a rational concept, is still largely understood by our countrymen. On the other hand, if you look at what has worked in India, savings has worked. We all know that, right? India has one of the highest savings rate in the world. And there are many successful examples of savings in our country, whether it's the mutual fund example, whether it's indeed the life insurance example, right? In some ways, you could argue the success of life insurance in our country has been the success of savings. So in order for us to make India a protection market, it requires habit change at a massive scale. And I think all of what we are doing is necessary, but perhaps not sufficient for us to collectively get to our objective of insurance for all. And to answer your question, I think there are a few adjacencies that will help, let me say, serve the cause of protection, but perhaps led by another vehicle. One of those vehicles could be, as you pointed out, Saurabh, outpatient. That makes the product more tangible. It gives more usage. And if you lead with that, perhaps naturally protection comes in along with that. Today, there are some barriers as to why that is not yet taken off. Again, to your point, 35-40% of what we spend as a country is outpatient. But today, insurance is all hospitalization. And perhaps we need to tweak at a policy level what needs to be done to address that so that the product becomes more tangible, more used, and people start to say that, look, I'm getting some benefit. Because habit change at a country scale to pay a risk premium is very much work in progress. All of what we're doing is important, but it will take some time, is my own sense. I think the other thing that I want to offer, and we had this very interesting discussion in the Biba Manthan, is how can we lead, for example, health with savings, right? So when you start with savings, again, you're making it tangible. You're appealing to a behavior which is already a reasonably ingrained habit within Indians, and then you bring in protection along with that. The third point, which again you mentioned, is there are a whole bunch of adjacent services around health insurance, healthcare services, whether it's your general wellness, prevention, things that perhaps today's young Indian naturally gravitates towards. Again, is there a way for us to lead with an ecosystem play and bring in protection along the way? So I think, and I think the last point I would like to leave with you, Saurabh, as a policy maker, is given that we're looking at habit change at a country scale. I just go back to some of the work that Cass Sunstein and Richard Taylor did around nudges, and I do realize that a nudge unit has been set up. This is one of those products where the cost is today, the benefits are into the future and perhaps uncertain. So from a policy standpoint, ranging from perhaps mandates to nudges, whatever those nudges are in the form of incentives, I think taken together, we will certainly be able to progress and accelerate the journey that we so collectively want, as a country. So some thoughts from my side, Saurabh. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Girija ji, you have for a long time been associated to the reinsurance world and now leading the largest agriculture and the farm organization or the agri organization. Agriculture has been one of the most important concern in terms of the insurability aspect of it, and obviously the variability which is associated to that, into that area. We've been seeing certain changes that is taking place into the farm risk-related insurances, which is the Fasal Bima Yojana, as well as on the parametric side of it. We have also been seeing certain problems that has been associated to this scheme in terms of the risk selection, as well as the adverse areas which is associated to that. Plus, we have seen certain areas of the capacity which we have really been faced with. By and large, we are at the cusp wherein we have got a tremendous amount of the capacities that are required in the next 7 to 10 years, from where the entire produce will be versus the next of farm, which we will see from the technology perspective and from the surety perspective of how agriculture needs to look like from the farmers' welfare as well as the India's welfare perspective. Do you see that we are into the right direction? And if no, what are the gaps that you think that we need to really fulfill in terms of the saturation which is required from the right welfare and the efficiency-oriented agriculture insurance going forward?
Thank you, sir. And thank the Actual Society for this opportunity. Yeah. So, sir, actually, with this PMFBY scheme, it has been running for last many years, and with every upgradation of the scheme, there's been a lot of improvement in the scheme guidelines. The one that is now the scheme guidelines are again up for review, and we have put up our proposals. And as part of the scheme guidelines, there's a lot of promise in what is going to now be enforceable. And we see a lot of technological changes in the way technology will be used. So, for example, it's been recommended that 30% claim assessment based on technology should be used, which is a welcome change. And as far as the models for covering the entire exposure is there, I think we are also introducing models, cup and cap kind of models, which will restrict the exposure of the reinsurer or the insurer for that matter. So, and put increasing risk on the state government. These risks are there, and these improvements are also there, but the whole idea is that how are we covering the entire exposure to the farmer, and from that context, I think the PMFBY in the current form covering the entire exposure or the risk transfer, excess risk transfer going to the reinsurers is the ideal practice. But the capacity is being a constraint. I think some of the other models are being considered. So that's how capacity is being addressed at the moment. And apart from that, the current penetration level in crop is only 25%, which is a matter of concern. And this could largely be addressed if we universalize the scheme for a particular set of primary covers that would be required across the country, and basically the entire premium being picked up by the government, which is what the way it is done in other countries abroad. So if this is done, I think the penetration can be largely improved. And apart from that, the subsidy management, which has been an issue, like where the subsidy doesn't come in on time. I think there are some proposals, very positive proposals from the government side, wherein subsidies will be paid, at the start of the contract. This will enhance us to, service this sector in a much better way. And if this is also, if there is, we have put in some proposals to the regulator also. If this could be done by way of an escrow account, wherein the funds would be managed, and released on time, this could help us in a big way. And apart from that, allowing the distribution system to open up, allowing 27 intermediaries to work with the company, that has also that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for us. In the agriculture sector, particularly because it is very largely tech-driven, it will be helpful if we could also use the facility of IT startups, agro distributors and distributing agencies to distribute this product from start to finish. So this possibly would open up the sector in a very big way. These are the major things that we feel, and some regulation particularly for agriculture, because it's a different kind of business, different line of business. That would help us in a very big way.
So the paradigm for the insurance sector and therefore for the actuaries sitting here, as well as for the CEOs sitting here on the dais as well as in the room, is that we have to begin thinking from penetration to the saturation. And that is a paradigm shift. And that is where a question to all of you sitting here, as well as for all of you to reflect in this room. If we have to think a saturation level for the country of insurance, what are the three things as an ask that you have? A thing each for the legislator to think at the policy level, for the regulator to think at the regulatory level, and for the industry and the councils to think at the industry level. What are the things that you would have at the ask or at the wish list? Over to you, Mr. Srinivasan. One thing each.
So from the government side, creating a very positive legal framework is something which will help the regulator as well as the industry. From the regulator side, ease of doing business for the insurers, and also, involving the policyholders in the whole ecosystem of building the insurance setup in our country is something which is, I think, which is needed. From the general ecosystem, I feel, more insurers, more distributors, but essentially creating an insurance culture in our country is something very, very important. I think that's what all of us, I think everyone will have to work for it.
Mr. Singhel.
So from the government side, insurance is a game of data. So I think all data that we have should be put together, and actually should be, and I've always said they're the oldest data scientists, but they live up to it, use the data well for two things. One, creating products on the fly as per the need which is there. Two, for eliminating any kind of friction in claims. And three, for fraud detection. So if we have a common pool of data with all the protocols required, and access is there for the insurance industry, which can be used for these three things, I think it's very transformative for progressive companies to be able to bring solutions which nobody's thought of, pay claims on the fly, like I said, figure out fraud and take strong actions on that part. From regulatory perspective, ease of business and opening up for more companies. If US has 6,000 companies and we have less than 60, for a country like India, which is becoming one of the largest insurance market of the world, it's a huge gap. So we should be seeing how do we get at least 1,000 insurance companies, 2,000 insurance companies in the Indian market. Because that is where the innovation, the heating up, the excellence will start emerging. Otherwise, this cocoon of complacency and taking status as it is going and being happy about it should be destroyed. Everybody has to really think very differently. From the industry perspective, I don't think we are moving at a pace at which we should. It's a shame. We're not using collaborative efforts. I think the industry of being in silo, that era is gone. Industry together has to be in a collaborative effort of demolishing these frictions and coming with solutions, working strongly with the government, because in the end, it is the social fabric which the insurance takes care of. It stops the leaking bucket of the economy. It has an upside of 3% GDP growth for the government, and the industry has to play that role in a very collaborative, in a very strong manner. We combine these three together, Mr. Mishra, I think we shall lead the world in terms of how insurance is looked into the future.
Thank you. Girija ji.
As a legislative change, I think we need to bring in universalization of insurance across various sectors. Certain basic insurances need to be made mandatory. And for the regulatory, at the regulatory aspects, I think ease of doing business, wherein we have the, facilities provided in the ecosystem, like certain mandatory compliances which we have, they should be made available for insurers to be to procure them easily. That could help us in a long way to do our businesses.
And at the industry level, what should the industry be doing to contribute?
Yeah, at the industry level, I think we should go all out to, see how we can reach the last mile and use the, distributors in the system to engage all the technology and the actuarial talent to see that we're able to give a right product at the right price for the customer.
Krishnan ji.
I would agree with what Girija ji said as far as government is concerned. I think just talking about health, it's a massive public good. So investments, incentives, mandates, I think all three would be in my wish list for government and policymakers. As far as the insurance regulator is concerned, frankly, I think they are doing all that we could ask for them. It's a journey, no additional asks as long as we execute and see through what's already been initiated. From the industry, I agree with what Tapan said. I think the mantra needs to be cooperation, which is collaboration plus competition. I think that should be today's mantra moving forward.
And Abhay, last but not the least.
See, I'll put it into three buckets, maybe product, technology and data. On the product side, I feel that, a lot of ease has already been created. India is actually two types of market. One, where you need very customized product, very, savvy customers. On the other hand, people just need a very standard kind of a product, and these two markets coexist. So PMJJY's success shows that, we need insurance for reaching out to masses, everybody. And similarly, we need products which are very at the high end, whereby, long-term care, for example, is not available right now. So we need to think, for both the segments very differently. So I think on the product side, industry, we need to do a lot actually. On the technology side, I feel, the online platforms and all have still not exploded. I mean, worldwide also, we don't find the usage to the optimum level. I mean, we feel that it has the potential, but it still underperforms in terms of distribution, strength. Still it is, especially on the life insurance side, it is still backed by a lot of, manpower and people intensive. But I somehow have a feeling that in the next couple of years, with so much of technology integration happening, it may suddenly take off in a very, very big way. And I think that's where, again, the industry has to work to collaborate. As Tapan said, that, we have to see that whether if one KYC done by one company can be sufficient for other companies, so we don't need to keep on asking for the same information. There need to be, on the data side, we perhaps need a regulator to, create some help in creating a repository for health, which perhaps can become very easy for both life and health, products to be written actually and very quickly issued. So those kind of support, if it comes from the regulator, I think the regulator has been trying to ease a lot of things on the capital side and product side. But this data sometimes, is a bottleneck. On the financial data, I think a lot of work has already been done. Financial data is easily available. With the consent of the customer, I think we can easily get it, but it's very handy, but not the health data. So I think that can be one area.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What a wonderful, provocative, thoughtful and insightful session it's been. I actually sincerely thank all of my panelists out here in this session. And may I keep it open for any audience to have any questions with these panelists out here. Thank you very much. Any questions?
We have mics around, so anyone who wants to ask a question, please raise their hand. We'll get a mic to you.
So that has been generally a trend around the actuaries. They have less questions in the industry setups as well. We've all been used to it, but that's wonderful. That's been a general take in the last 25, 30 years of my experience with the actuaries. But then I am sure it's going to change as we go forward. They will be more engaging across the communities as we go forward. But wonderful, it's been a great session, and look forward to draw more and more such synergies as we go forward. Thank you very much. Appreciate.
Thank you, Saurabh. Saurabh, can I request you to please give a token of appreciation to our speakers? Can you just please wait? Can you please give a token of appreciation to Mr. Abhay? to Mr. Abhay. Next to Mr. Krishnan Ramachandran. Next to Mr. Tapan Singhel. And then to Mr. Girija Subramanian. Thank you, speakers. Arun, can I quickly have you on stage? And please present a token of appreciation to Mr. Saurabh Mishra. Thank you, Saurabh, and thank you to all our speakers. Thank you so much for your insights.